Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this latest episode of the Healthcare Innovation Podcast by Health Arc Insights. Today, we have a very special guest, Meeta Gangrade. She is the Chief Digital and Operating Officer at One-to-One Health. She spent a lot of years working in the corporate world and now is trying to do something really innovative and interesting in the field of mental health. So without any further delay, I'll let Meeta introduce herself and then would love to understand from her experience, learn from her journey.
Sure. Thanks, Pura, for having me here. I'm always excited to talk to people, especially about innovation and digital. So I'm Meeta. I'm based in Bangalore, born and brought up here, and I've lived in a number of countries and traveled perhaps about 100 plus countries as well through my life. So I've been
Wow.
a traveler from the age of, in my engineering days, I did a lot of traveling thanks to one of the students exchange program that I got picked up in. Uh, yeah, I love art, literature, and technology. So that's a little short, brief introduction of me, Pura.
That is one thing on my to-do list, which has completely slowed down. So one of the goals is to travel to 100 countries. I'm stuck at mid 20s, so I have a lot of ground to cover. But great to hear that you have achieved that goal.
Right.
So, and Meeta, if you can just a little bit about your professional background, your journey, like how you started your career, and how you got to what you are doing today.
Sure. So, I mean, I was born in a family which believed engineering was the only way you could, sort of graduate and survive. So, I did my engineering, but fortunately, as soon as I got into the engineering, I also got selected in a very interesting program, which was a global social network that entrepreneur and venture capitalist Mr. Bill Melton was setting up. It was called the Melton Foundation. Uh, Due to that, I got exposed to about people from different countries, and we got an opportunity to interact and work on different projects and ideas that could influence the world. So I think
Mhm.
while I was graduating, I had the opportunity to work on problems like education, gender, uh, poverty, etc., which were common concerns across the globe. As soon as I graduated, I was also of the belief that I need to get some experience before I ever did a master's in business. And I joined TCS, which was the first day, first campus recruitment that happened. And uh, I was very fortunate that I got in the 2000s, where there was a little bit of a sudden dip in the economy, and TCS was also going through a very interesting phase of becoming a $1 billion organization. And I was fortunate to be part of that team that was helping figure out how will TCS transform. So I think very early in my career, I managed to get a good glimpse of not just the technology delivery of services companies, but how do you configure and wire services companies for scale, which I think was very innovative. And I'm still a big fan of all the stuff that I think TCS had thought of and evangelized back then. At some point, I think the scale of a large company was getting to me, and I decided to quit and get back and do something different. So, from restaurants to e payment ideas, I tried to work on a number of them in the 1 year that I took a break. And when I ran out of money, then I joined another startup. They were actually from, the founders were all Bay Area folks who had also set up a engineering division in India where we were focused on creating products such as, TIPCO was one of our uh, the clients for whom we were building the products, but largely it was a team that was focused on the biggest problem statement that enterprises had back then, which is how do you integrate all the processes and systems in those organizations. Eventually, we got acquired into HCL, and it was a very interesting journey from there because I got the opportunity to work on setting up all the new service lines, that were coming into being because, as you know, technology has evolved quite rapidly. I got the opportunity to work right from sales to pre-sales to solutions to architecture to coding to setting up new stuff. So I've always been the person where something is not defined and people would put me in there and said, "Go figure it out." So somewhere around a couple of years into that journey, I was asked to relocate to Europe and help put in our digital footprint out there. And it was a wonderful journey where, starting with a four-member team, we expanded to being a pretty large 2,000, 3,000 people organization for digital.
Wow.
But also it was very interesting because digital was very undefined. I mean, it's actually a very overloaded word, but largely the problems we were working on is really about transforming and innovation within companies. So I think I was fortunate to work with a number of CIOs, CTOs, and chief marketing officers or business process officers to drive change, ranging from healthcare, finance, logistics, and all of those domains. So somewhere around, again, I think after 10 years into that whole space, I decided that the larger organizations come with a very different paradigm of problems around change. So I wanted to come back to India, one, because it was interesting. So I quit my job again and got back to India, not knowing how I'm going to use all of the various ideas that I had. But I decided I would, for a year, just cleanse myself of the corporate setup and get my hands dirty on different problems that India was going through, because I wanted to understand the Indian consumers. I wanted to understand the problems over here, and I really wanted to use technology to solve the ground level impactful problems. So two of my favorite areas of interest have always been education. I truly believe I want to continue to do something to get every Indian educated at some point and be able to consume content even. Uh, but mental health, or the whole fact about influencing a large number of people, has been the other one. So I was fortunate to interact with One-to-One Help, the founders Archana and Anil, and well, I think while I started consulting, I don't know when I got in and started, being part of the team, and it's been a wonderful journey so far. So yeah, you asked me for a short one, but I think I ended up giving you a pretty long one.
No, that's great. So one question I had, like, so how long did you work with HCL?
Approximately 13 to 14 years, if I include
Wow,
those parts of the startup
that's a
phase.
long stint. So you talked about digital, right? You worked with CIOs, chief marketing officers, did digital transformation there, all this innovative stuff. Like, what was the key difference between driving innovation in large enterprises and then now what you do in a smaller company like One-to-One Help, right? How was it different?
Well, that's a it's a question that I can talk to you for hours about. But I think first of all, transformation and innovation itself is hard. And it's, the technology is the first part of the problem, but getting it to land into the business and actually deliver value is one of the hardest parts. So I used to, categorize organizations into two segments. Are you born digital, or are you getting to be reborning? I mean, taking a rebirth in digital, right? So born digital companies have some advantage where you configure yourself from day one to be completely automated in your supply chain and business value chain. I have largely worked with both large, and today I'm working with a smaller company in making them reinvent themselves into a very new paradigm, right? So the differences, I mean, I think the objectives are very similar, but the differences come in terms of a multitude of factors. The first is focus, right? So I do feel that when organizations are very large, the focus points become too many. You're trying to do too many things. You have a lot of business lines that you want to transform. So the ability to focus becomes very hard the larger you are. Whereas where I feel like in a smaller organization, the focus is quite clear and a very, the clarity of objective and what you're trying to do is a little bit simpler in that sense. But equally, the pace of change expected in a large and a small company is pretty different, right? So one is when you are a larger company, even evangelizing and conceptualizing the change process or the transformation is hard. And usually these end up becoming multi-year programs simply because of the political challenges in the organization much more than the technological challenges, right? So the size also makes the programs more complex and small, you know. But equally on the other side, if you look at it, the constraints in a small company are several, right? Because you're constrained for resources, you're constrained for time, you're constrained for outputs, because you're ultimately the business is smaller and it's banking on this transformation to drive value and market growth. But I do feel that sometimes because of that, you do a much better job on the ground because you're able to focus, like I said, differently, right? So
Correct. Yeah, but I think in large companies, right, one of the biggest difference I feel is, and I also run a small company, so I know they are resourceful. If they put their might and mind into something, they can get it done. One thing though I've felt is, and maybe this is little more Indian context, but even outside, few years ago, technology was considered trivial. So the level of investment or the willingness to invest was low. Now I guess that is changing. Everybody believes that it's key to survival. But a few years ago, when that was considered relatively less important, how did you kind of uh, break that situation? How were you able to convince people to innovate and get more tech savvy?
Right. So I think the first thing is, in people's mind, most of the times they're either a healthcare company or a logistics company. They don't believe they're a tech company, right? So that itself is a big mind shift. And I can't quote the client, but I did have a client in Netherlands who wanted to completely challenge that status quo, right? And said that we happen to be a bank, a tech company with a banking license. For a company which has called themselves a bank for a number of years, it's a very different mindset where you're saying now my CEO down believes that this company has technology, which is very key for uh, success, because that's the only way we can survive, right? Getting that leadership buy-in, the investor and board buy-in is one of the hardest parts. Because
Mm.
does the CIO truly have the equal seat in the decision making of the company? Is the CEO even aware of technology and values technology? Are some of the questions that many companies don't even ask themselves. At least they used to not ask that 6 to 7 years ago, right? That has
Yeah, I think
changed.
the risk was low back, right? Back then, that the risk of losing current business was low. Now the risk is so high that it kind of makes people move. But back then, I guess the risk was
Right. I
quite
mean,
low.
today, for example, in the healthcare, a small startup can disrupt your entire value chain, even if you've been a hospital for a number of years. Just like Uber, for example, has been a classic example who challenged the entire transportation industry and, gave them a run for their money. So then you have neobanks and digital banks and fintechs coming up. So Amazon and Apple are soon going to be banks, right? I mean,
Yeah,
the difference, it's also about how soon can you get adjacencies in businesses. It's not just about, I used to be a music company, but today I can be a bank, and tomorrow I can be a completely new, even healthcare distributor, perhaps, because I have most of the customers on the globe on my platform.
yeah. No, Amazon, for instance, has been a big challenger now. They started telemedicine now in US. They've been doing distribution in pharma, and tech-wise, they are so fast and they are so agile. They could threaten existing businesses any day. It could happen very quickly.
Correct. So
So,
yeah,
Meeta, now with that experience, now you started working in the mental health space. What is the state of mental health space today in India? Like, how do you see it now that you're on the front line of it, and where do we go from here?
sure. I think mental health itself globally is a subject which is not very well addressed and understood, I would say. Perhaps the acceptance that there is a need for interventions in the mental health space is more in the West than in India. But statistics say that at least 15% Indians require some form of intervention today to survive and have a more balanced life. And this is just people who are actually needing intervention, right? Now, the second thing that also we have to recall is that the Indian context is very different. The therapies of the West actually don't work in India at all. The social constructs are very different. The cultural approach to looking at situations is not the same as the West. Just culturally, we are a more collaborative, community-driven country than an individualistic, uh, perspective on how people survive. Uh, I do see that in the last couple of years, though, in the metros and bigger places where people have got access to, um, Bollywood. I think a lot of things uh, that happened to some of the Bollywood stars, some of the cricketers, is coming out more in the open, and people believe I'm not necessarily crazy if I'm going through a challenge in the way that I can manage my emotions. But I think the bigger tipping point is that today while there is a need from a policy perspective, I think we're still very nascent. From a cost barrier perspective, there are no insurance models or healthcare provisions on how people can actually take care of their mental health. Whereas on the health side, there's still a larger penetration that you'll find in health insurances. Government's doing a lot of stuff, around configuring it. Uh, And I think only when a lot of that infrastructure will be put in, there will be far, far more acceptance. But I do feel that last 2, 3 years, and especially after COVID, there has been a huge hockey stick need that people have expressed, and people are okay to express their vulnerabilities today, and
I
people
see.
are okay to go and take help from experts. So it is changing, but I don't think the solutions of the West will work in
But
India at
so
all.
on that, Meeta, and because you said solutions of the West, right? I think, and you talked about insurance. Is mental health today so prohibitively expensive that insurance is a key barrier, or is it still more cultural, more awareness related, and then insurance could be an additional uh, push, but at the same time, it might not be the main thing.
So if I actually look at the barriers of this space, the first one that comes to mind is, think about it, we have 1.3 billion odd people with perhaps less than 15,000 actually well-trained experts who are counselors
Mhm.
available in India. There are a ton of people who claim to be counselors with zero training or expertise. But one of the disadvantages India has is every nook at every corner, somebody is giving you advice on how to deal with your life, not realizing that the level of intervention that you finally need to resolve issues needs to come from somebody who's actually had that expertise. So I think
Expertise.
the first challenge we are going to face is, let's assume people remove the stigma. Do we have enough time availability of expertise to actually cater to that kind of a need? The second thing I think is, when you say even if there is availability, how do you give access? And for access, the very first step is sensitization. Do people even know when do they need expertise? Or when is the time when I can actually go and talk to a counselor? What and mostly what we've seen is people come after they've tipped to the other end, where it's the stress has become extreme. Today we are quite a bit in habit, at least in the metros, that people go for a yearly health checkup, but very few would go and take an assessment every year on how are they doing on their depression levels or on their stress levels and those kind of things, right? So people don't even give it attention because they mostly think they can cope with it, and they don't need to get an expert's advice on how to manage their lives better. So I think, the because of the scale problem, the solution in India cannot be one where we are only looking at creating experts, but we have to move towards a more preventive care rather than a reactive care approach. So can I give tools to people to constantly understand themselves a little better and address issues even before they surface? So there are options of how you can create interventions which are more digital in nature, at least in terms of assessments, in terms of getting people to understand the challenges. The second piece would be that, then how do I digitally make talent available to them whenever they need it, for the time frame that they need it? And then can we create a model where we understand the person's psychological profile, not just today, but over the years? Because no intervention can be isolated. You have to have a journey with the member or the individual through that phase.
So the things you just said, right? So Meeta, sounds like you are actually also trying to convert yourself from a healthcare company or a service company to a tech company, a digital company, and because you now said that you will enable tools instead of providing a service, or you will enable them with a journey. Like, how has this journey been for you in terms of transforming a healthcare company into a tech company, in terms into a product company?
Sure. So I think the good part was that we had wired our services in a very SaaS model from the beginning, right?
Hmm.
So the model in which we operate first is, we've very consciously attacked the B2B market, where we actually address the needs of the employees of an organization, because we believe the one barrier of cost is gone, right? If the company is funding for it, the
That's
employee at least
taken.
is not worried about the cost aspect and is hopefully more open to using these services, right? Uh, Very early, we had actually put in technology to manage our most of the operations from a back end perspective, right? But when I came in and I looked at what we need to do to transform and truly become a digital company, I think, to me, I looked at every part of our value chain in the delivery of that patient's life cycle or the member's life cycle, right? Which is that the first part is, how do I digitally use tools to sensitize and get people to figure out when to come in and start using, how to even start getting engaged with a platform that can perhaps be of use to them. So one of the things that I reflected upon is that most people spend most of their time trying to get their validation from Facebook, social media, and what somebody else is thinking about them. So we are really trying to challenge that paradigm, saying, can we get a habit of people spending time to check in with themselves and try to understand what's going on with them on a regular basis, right? Because then you're going to get insights, even giving that insight that you probably have to deal with ABCDE is a big deal, right? So how do I show mirror to a person is a very tough one, because when you look at the counseling process, a lot of it is about showing the mirror and you actually finding your own solutions, because you're able to see yourself very objectively in a situation, right? The second thing that we looked at is, okay, now which parts of the disruption can happen in this value chain, right? Which is that there is certainly no two ways of saying that expertise can't, in my opinion, still be delivered digitally. What I mean by that is you can't replace a computer for a human entirely in the process and say that there'll be a chatbot who's chatting with you and you're going to find your solutions. But the stages through which people go, digital can certainly play a big part. So, for examples, a lot of times if you come into counseling, your post counseling experience is where you're given exercises, you're given activities to do. But you would typically do them on a notebook and the data is lost,
Yeah.
right? So now we could give you some tools on the platform where you could actually come and uh, manage that life cycle, and you can interact with an expert even while you're doing that activity if you're stuck, versus wait for your next session to happen, right? So enabling that communication and the tools and packaging that journey into a common platform is another big part of the kinds of things that we're trying to do. Lastly, there are tremendous innovations happening on the assessment side. So traditionally, you would have to fill lengthy questionnaires to understand and do psychometric tests. Today, there is AI that's playing a big role in using voice markers, using image markers to to even do that first level of triage, saying who is somebody who's actually going to be at risk to life, and can I actually do something different for this person, right? So, for example, we man all our channels with real experts, because we believe for anybody to pick up a phone or write a message or email us takes a lot. And if we
Yeah.
don't have an expert who intercepts it and doesn't trivialize the issue, that's victory, right? But maybe technology can play a role in even triaging that in the future and then routing the right problem to the right person.
So, Neeta, from all those things you mentioned, I think one thing I'm also trying to take away is you took something which you know works, let's say counseling works, experts work, and then you started building technology around that to enable them better. Which I feel like today a lot of people in the drive to disrupt kind of overdo things. So they try to solve things which are working really well and then end up having kind of a not the right mix of solution. Uh, so what's your experience on there? How do you draw a line? Because as you start this transformation journey for your company, there is a risk that that could happen, right? And that is where the largest resistance comes from, that the status quo business is running well. But what if you overdo and lose everything?
Absolutely right, Purav. So there are, I mean, I think if one thing my 15 years of experience has taught me is what not to do, right? It's the problem with a lot of people doing digital today is they look at technology as the one-stop pony to solve every
Everything.
problem on earth, right? But if you take a look at healthcare, there are certain problems you shouldn't be solving with technology today, and there's no value in solving those with technology, right? So for me, it's very clear that the first thing I did was look at the entire value chain of that journey of the user uh, when they come in to one-to-one help, right? What does an expert actually give them? And we're very clear that even in mental health, there are very stages of the kinds of solutions you can give. Like there are mindfulness kind of an apps which are focused primarily on very superficial first level interventions to give you the first level of calm and peace that you want. It doesn't promise solution. It doesn't promise the solving of the problem. Then there's a second intervention that comes in, which is around interacting iteratively with you, trying to address, like for example, if a couple is having an issue in a marriage, you need to have an expert and a couple of sessions with an expert to resolve those problems. You can't just take the help of an app and say, I'm going to resolve this issue on my own. The app can give you ways in which you can talk to a counselors, ways in which you could do tests and communicate, but the app cannot really replace what the counselor's expertise is at the end of the day, right? So I'm very clear that there are about 15 to 20 things we have decided consciously we are not going to do as a company, right? Which is
I see.
create solutions which we will not be able to give deep interventions on, because there may be other people who are trying to do that and they will fill the gap, right? So we don't have to solve every part of the value chain either. We need to build our expertise in the area that I think we need that, where we think we have the expertise, right? Which is core emotional health and psychology. Equally, we are not a company that goes into the medical side of, uh, mental health. So we're very clear that we stop there and then we pass on that to some of the partners and other people that we collaborate with to get that piece sorted out. So I think having clarity of what you're not, that's the first. Second is also, it's very difficult when there's an existing business. So it's almost like, I remember one of my coaches had said that you can't always run a race and tie your shoelace at the same time without tripping, right? It's very hard. So you have to be conscious that there is a plane land, there's a plane that's on its journey. You're trying to change the plane, you're trying to change the destination, and you're hoping you can land without disruption, right? So it's not easy because you have to keep your existing business on and not disrupt it. You need to also drive change at a pace where it becomes meaningful. So I think the bigger question also comes as to how much you can invest and where should you invest. And the third element is, I think one of the reasons a lot of these change programs fail is you don't put the right kind of bandwidth behind the
The
change.
change.
The bandwidth is too caught up in running the existing stuff, and therefore the new things can never get done, right? Because all the people who know, so the value of now is there. I mean, you need to, the history and the value of what you've been delivering is very precious. But how do you free that up and couple it with new skills and deliver change? I think that's the hard part.
That's the hardest part. Agreed. Agreed. I think. So Meeta, since you have spent so many years doing such innovative initiatives, both in a large organization, now in a smaller one, outside healthcare, in healthcare, if you have to give like a key parting messages to our listeners who are trying to
Mhm.
innovate within healthcare, what would those things be?
Sure. So I think couple of things is within healthcare, you have to be very, very sensitive about the fact that uh, there are humans involved, there are lives involved, and there are repercussions uh, to when technology can, if technology doesn't work out well, then it can actually be very fatal in some situations. So you have to be very careful when you're trying to disrupt something and make sure that you've got enough evidence to prove that it'll actually work and it'll work at scale. And you don't have just a few handful of data points to believe that solution A works for A, so it will work for B, right? So that understanding that today machines can translate languages very well. They can uh, maybe even understand a transaction-based response. So if you have a delivery system, it's very easy to say, where's my food? Where is the order? But if somebody is actually interacting with you because they don't know what's wrong with them, it's a very different
It's a
conversation,
risk.
right? So that entire discovery is not very easy, that I think machines can master today. So you have to be cognizant of that fact, right? Equally, you have to also be clear that the legality, the confidentiality, and the data security in these cases is quite different from regular other businesses, because you're again dealing with records of people, their very personal data. And India today doesn't have too many amazing policies, unfortunately, around it. But it's always better to be safe from day one than to try to say there is no boundary. So I will do, I'll take my liberty in some cases and not be careful about. So I think the way you wire security, the way you think about data, has to be a little different, right? And the uh, scale of India is very different. So if you're solving problems in India, I would say there is so much diversity uh, that you'll have to think of that variety and be clear about the things that you can do within that vertical if you're
So
choosing.
maybe you don't take India as one market. There are many markets within a
Absolutely.
market.
Right. So if I take mental health today, we have realized that we need to create at least 20 to 30 focus solutions to cater to the list of companies that we have, right? So blue
Wow.
collar people are different. People working in sales on the field are very different. People working in a tech company like Google or Facebook are very different. People working in a TCS is very different, right? So I'm saying like the diaspora is so much, and within them bring in women and the age groups, right? So people in 20s to 30s to parents to singles, they all have very, very different contexts and concerns. So the way you solution cannot be the same for each of these people, right? So we're trying to build a contextualization engine also, which is more relevant to who you are and you're able to see what actually matters to you. So do not design your solutions, I would say, assuming that the diversity doesn't exist. Uh, Lastly, I would say that mental health solutions today cannot be a complete automated end-to-end supply chain. You have to factor human handoffs, right? So by design, you should create mechanisms through which a journey one is sustained, because it's never a one single, it's not like buying where you may come once and leave. Uh, there's relevance context that I've gained because you've come in once and interacted with me. So no matter how your handoffs work from departments, from people, your journey has to be very seamless. And the data that you collect is very, very detailed and nuanced, right? So how do you bring that data together and actually create a understanding of that profile of that person is also something very interesting and different. And you cannot apply a retail model to a healthcare model in any ways. Though I've seen a lot of startups think it's the same, right? Building the profile of a person is the same in both contexts. So there are a lot of such differences, uh, but I would think those are some that I can, recount right away.
Great. That's a wonderful conversation. So it was very insightful to learn from your experience. Time flew very quickly while listening to your experiences. So thanks once again for being a part of this. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Purav. I had fun, and thank you for having me here.